Well, it's going to be interesting, Joe, to see how they play it, and they've sort of given themselves a few different avenues, and we will see. We may see as soon as today, depending on how these opening statements go. Prosecutors, of course, say that Elizabeth Holmes carried out a long-running scheme to defraud doctors, patients, and investors with her company that she claimed had the technology to save the world. Of course, founding it, Theranos, as a dropout from Stanford at age 19. Saying that it had the technology to perform a range of blood tests based on a tiny sample from a finger prick. That would have been revolutionary if it worked. It did not, and the company collapsed in 2018 under a barrage of regulatory actions and lawsuits. Elizabeth Holmes now faces 20 felony counts. This trial has been delayed multiple times, of course, by the pandemic, also by Elizabeth Holmes' pregnancy, revealed earlier this year. But now we will get underway today with these opening statements, first from the prosecution, which will talk about not just the way investors were allegedly damaged, but also how patients were damaged by false test results. We may also yet today hear from the defense, and they've laid out a couple of different possible strategies. Was it Silicon Valley puffery that all sorts of entrepreneurs have engaged in over time? Was she the victim of abuse by the chief operating officer and her ex-boyfriend, Sunny Balwani? Was she intentionally committing fraud, as the prosecution claimed? This case will be heard by a jury of 7 men and 5 women, along with 5 alternates. They were chosen over the space of 3 days last week. Nearly every one of the prospective jurors, when asked, said they had heard about the case, but that's not enough to get you out of jury duty. You have to be able to show that you are fair, and both sides satisfied enough with this jury panel, which will hear the opening statements today. We may then as soon as today, possibly later this week, begin hearing from witnesses. Among the first, Erica Chung, the former lab associate who became a whistleblower at Theranos, as prosecutors try to take the jury inside this company that they say was a flat-out fraud. Joe?
Yep, we'll let the justice system work its way through all this, Scott, and let me see how would I phrase it, because I don't want to sway anyone. But if I were a prosecutor, I might say, if you need to subcontract and send out samples to other entities that actually know how to test blood and then get the results back before you give your results back from the one drop, you know how did she not know that to get any results at all, they had to send it out to actual lab testing companies to say anything? I mean, that totally refutes the idea that you thought the one drop system was working. She never believed it was working.
That's going to be what the prosecutors have to prove, that she intentionally lied, and also what was told to investors and doctors and patients. Was there actual fraud here? This is going to take about 13 weeks. We'll be talking about this as we lead up to Christmas and hopefully have a verdict by then.
Well, because we're not there yet, Scott, 5 years later, right, we still don't have something that can do that. What made anyone there think that they had a black box device that was doing the chemistry that would have been necessary to do those things? Everybody knew that didn't exist, that had anything to do with it. Did they not, or did some person know and he didn't tell anyone, or she didn't tell anyone?
Well, that's going to be what the government has to prove, that they knew it and they told everyone that they had that technology. That's the crux here. It's not whether this was some fantastic idea, because lots of fantastic ideas come out of Silicon Valley that never come to fruition. It's whether they knew that this was impossible and told investors and told doctors and patients and everyone else otherwise. Again, the burden of proof is on the government.
Scott, I just still don't get the defense. Just make the argument to me. I want you to pretend that you are Elizabeth Holmes. Give me the 60-second version.
Well, we'd like to know what the defense is, and they've telegraphed these different avenues, as I said. One being that this is how things go in Silicon Valley. She really believed that this could be done, and was doing what Silicon Valley entrepreneurs have done since this whole ecosystem here started. But then there's also this issue of, was there mental illness? And one of the people on Elizabeth Holmes' witness list is an expert by the name of Mindy Mechanic, who has examined her and has determined that she was the victim of abuse by Sunny Balwani, the former chief operating officer, who essentially, according to this expert, sort of controlled Elizabeth Holmes so that she couldn't form that intent that she would have needed to form to commit a crime. But we don't know exactly how that will be played. And of course, the government, as a result of the defense basically telegraphing that they're going to do this, they had the right to examine her as well. They'll bring on their own efforts to try and refute that. That's one of the reasons we're going to be here for 13 weeks.